Chantel Brown, representing Ohio's 11th District. Thank you for being here today. First, I want to thank my colleagues, Congresswoman Hayes and Congressman McGovern, for their longtime commitment to fighting hunger and for standing with me today as co-leads of the Hunger Free Future Act. I also want to recognize our other partners here today, FRAC President Carol Fitzsimmons, Simons, a steadfast voice in this fight. Now let us get one thing straight. I wish we didn't have to be here today. I wish we didn't have to introduce this bill. I wish we weren't forced to fend off the cruelty and callousness of those hell-bent on slashing support for families in need, but here we are. We are here because Donald Trump and House Republicans are at it again, pushing a heartless, gutless, shameless scheme to line the pockets of the ultra-wealthy while ripping food from the mouths of children, seniors, and veterans. Let's be clear. These cuts aren't about fiscal responsibility. These cuts aren't about economic efficiency. These cuts aren't about helping working families. These cuts are about cruelty, plain and simple. Republicans want $230 billion in cuts from the Agriculture Committee to maximize their tax handouts to the rich. And how do they plan to get there? By slashing SNAP, by gutting SNAP, by attacking SNAP over and over and over again. And the biggest target, fundamentally changing the Thrifty Food Plan, the very foundation of SNAP benefits. And what does that mean? Well, it means 40 million people. I repeat, 40 million people will struggle even more to afford basic healthy meals. It means parents will have to choose between feeding their families or paying the rent. It means seniors on fixed income will have to decide between a warm meal or life-saving medication. It means veterans will have to navigate the challenges of civilian life on an empty stomach. And for what? To fund tax giveaways for billionaires? To funnel more money into the pockets of Wall Street executives while Main Street families suffer? Let's put this in perspective. The average SNAP benefit is $6 a day. $6 a day. That's $2 a meal. That's barely enough for a cup of coffee and a bagel. And yet Republicans want to slash it even further, all to bankroll tax breaks that would hand the wealthiest of 0.1% of Americans an average annual windfall of $315,000. That's not just unfair and un-American, it is unconscionable. That is why I'm proud to introduce the Hunger Free Future Act with my colleagues. This bill is simple, straightforward, and shouldn't be controversial. It ensures that any update to Thrifty Food Plan doesn't increase hunger for low-income families, because SNAP isn't just a line item in a budget. It's survival. It's how parents feed their babies. It's how seniors stretch their Social Security checks. It's how people with disabilities maintain their independence and dignity. Slashing SNAP doesn't make our country stronger. It makes our people weaker. Cutting food aid doesn't balance the budget. It bankrupts morality. And letting our neighbors go hungry isn't just sound policy. It's a disgrace. We are the wealthiest nation to ever exist. And yet Republicans are willing to let children starve to pad the pockets of the privileged. But not on my watch. The Hunger Free Future Act is about basic human decency. It's about ensuring that no family, no senior, no veteran in this country has to go to bed hungry. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, to stand up. Stand up for family, stand up for fairness, and stand up for food security. We will not allow political games to dictate whether Americans eat. We will not allow reckless cruelty to replace responsible governance. We will not allow Donald Trump and his enablers to starve out working families while billionaires feast. The fight for a hunger-free future starts now, and we are not backing down. And with that, I would like to turn it over to my good friend, Representative McGovern. Thank you.
Well, first of all, let me thank my colleague and friend, Congresswoman Chantel Brown, for introducing this important bill, and to the incredible Congresswoman Jahana Hayes and to Crystal Fitzsimons from FRAC. I want to thank them for championing this issue. Look, we need the Hunger Free Future Act now more than ever. What House Republicans and Donald Trump want to do to SNAP is despicable, period. Their plan will literally take food away from hungry children, seniors, and Americans with disabilities to pay for tax breaks for their billionaire buddies. I would remind my Republican colleagues that the update to the Thrifty Food Plan was included in the Republican-written Farm Bill in 2018. Congress told USDA to do the update. It was the first meaningful update to the Thrifty in nearly 50 years. It resulted in a very modest increase of about $1.35 per day in SNAP. $1.35 an increase. That's what they're all upset about. I would also remind my Republican colleagues that today the average SNAP benefit is about $6 a day, a little over $2 per meal. You can't even buy a goddamn cup of coffee for that in the Capitol. The SNAP benefit is already woefully inadequate, and Republicans want to gut it so that Elon Musk and his ultra-wealthy crew get a bigger tax break. What the hell is wrong with these people? I am sick of Republicans screwing poor people to help their wealthy friends and donors. Let me point out one more thing before I wrap up. Chantel, Johanna, and I serve on the House Ag Committee. And what I find especially galling is that Republican members, self-proclaimed Aggies, are going along to get along with this disgraceful Republican budget proposal that rips $230 billion from SNAP within the Ag Committee jurisdiction. Look, if they're not moved by the moral argument that cuts of this magnitude will make hunger worse in this country, then they sure as hell should care about the practical argument. There will be no farm bill if SNAP is gutted. The long-standing coalition of farm country and nutrition folks that work together to get a farm bill will be fractured beyond repair. The Republican Aggies know this, but they're too scared to stand up to their leadership or face the wrath of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Gutting SNAP to pay for tax breaks for billionaires is a rotten thing to do. Shame on them. The Hunger Free Future Act is about protecting families from harmful, politically motivated cuts that would make it harder for people to put food on the table. I want to thank Congresswoman Brown for leading this effort, and now I will turn it over to my good friend and great leader on this issue, Congresswoman Johanna Hayes.
Thank you, Representative McGovern, for your words and for the flyover. Just for me. Well, here we go again. This has been an issue that I've been fighting for since the day that I came into Congress, and I thank Representative Brown for introducing this piece of legislation, because for me this is just basic. It defies understanding that every time we have to go back to the table for negotiating, the one ask on the Republican side, or one of the asks on the Republican side, is always cuts to food safety nets in this country. You hear over and over how we are the most prosperous country in the world, how we are the wealthiest country in the world, how we are working for global diplomacy to help other countries around the world. So it defies all logic that we would make a conscious legislative choice not to feed families in this country. Food is easy. Food security is something that we can absolutely address in this country. Hunger is a policy choice. We had a hearing last week and we heard that people don't go to bed in this country hungry because of war or drought or crises like we see around the rest of the world. It's because of a policy choice. We have enough food. On the Ag Committee, my entire time, we fought to make sure that the revaluation of the Thrifty Food Plan was implemented so that we wouldn't go decades without at least an evaluation. It doesn't even say that it has to be updated every time. It says it needs to be evaluated so that we can take our current needs into consideration as we are moving forward. I just don't understand it. In the debt ceiling, in the budget, in the CR, in the Farm Bill, every chance they get in reconciliation, taking food out of the mouths of hungry Americans is their go-to play. I've said it many times before, but this issue is so deeply personal for me. When I came to Congress, I asked for the Ag Committee, specifically the Subcommittee on Nutrition, because I know what it's like to return on a Tuesday morning, like the kids in my district at home are because they had yesterday off to celebrate Eid, for those kids who don't have healthy meals at home and start their first 3 periods in the morning with their head down on the desk waiting for lunch to happen. That is a policy choice and something that we absolutely have the ability to address in this country and in this Congress. And I truly can't understand why my Republican colleagues are trading in currency that is the future of our children, of our working people, of our veterans, of our seniors. You can't learn on an empty stomach. You can't work on an empty stomach. Your health outcomes are diminished when you don't have access to healthy foods. And the fact that we have to keep relitigating this over and over and over again feels unnecessary to me, but it's something that I'm willing to do. Because although they may want to trade in the millions of Americans who go to bed hungry every day, their futures, and not do the hard work of making sure that they're hunger-free, although they want to trade that to curry favor with the wealthiest 1% of Americans who will never, ever have to rely on any one of these programs, is something that I'm going to fight for. I don't understand how any person who identifies as an American, how any person who runs for public office could be okay with legislation like this. It just doesn't make sense. It is penny wise and pound foolish. Because what will happen in return will be detrimental to our community. Educational outcomes, work outcomes, crime statistics, all of those things will be devastated by the fact that people are just trying to feed their children. So again, I thank Representative Brown for her efforts on this critical piece of legislation, and to Congressman McGovern, who has been a champion in this fight and fought alongside me on the Nutrition Subcommittee for as long as I've been here and even before I came. But again, this is a policy choice. And I would encourage you to ask different questions. Ask different questions. Ask our Republican colleagues how it's okay to always attack programs like SNAP and food security while simultaneously raising the debt ceiling and increasing tax cuts for the wealthiest. How is that okay? Ask them about the millions of people in their own congressional districts who will be decimated by cuts to these programs. How do they reconcile with that? Ask them. Switch the conversation and ask them, is the benefit and the risks outweigh the good that these programs do? Let's sit down and have a conversation about improving and making sure that we have hunger-free futures and that we stabilize these food safety nets. Let's have that conversation. But if you keep coming to us and your only proposal is to gut programs like SNAP and take food off the table of children and families, it's a hard pass. So again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all of our champions in the fight. And with that,
Oh, it's all wet.
Yes,
Okay.
be careful with your book.
Oh, it'll be fine. Thank you. And I just have to say what an honor it is to be here standing up with Representative Brown, Representative McGovern, and Representative Hayes, who are champions for the federal nutrition programs and leaders in the fight to end hunger. I'm Crystal Fitzsimons, the interim president for the Food Research and Action Center, commonly called FRAC, and we are working to build a nation free from hunger. We have 42 million people in this country who live in food insecure households that are struggling to put food on the table, and included in that is 13.8 million children. We need to do better. FRAC strongly supports the Hunger Free Future Act because it will help to ensure that SNAP will continue to provide families and individuals the nutrition they need to make sure that they keep hunger at bay. SNAP is our first line of defense against hunger, and the majority of households who participate in SNAP have a child, an older adult, or a person with disability in them. It reduces hunger and poverty and improves nutrition. And because of that, it actually has a really significant impact on improving health outcomes. It actually reduces healthcare costs by about $1,400 per person. It reduces hospitalizations for kids and adults. Moms who participate in SNAP actually have better outcomes, birth outcomes for their babies. It improves mental health outcomes, and it also protects against obesity. These are all the things that we see SNAP doing, that the research says it does, and it's also what we hear from people. We have a whole process where we're collecting stories from families, and all we hear is about how important SNAP is to helping keep hunger at bay and buying healthier food. We also know that there are long-term benefits for kids in participating in SNAP. Early access to SNAP actually equals better educational outcomes and better economic outcomes, which helps to reduce the cycle of poverty. We know there's a huge economic impact in communities related to SNAP as well. For every dollar that is spent on SNAP, it actually generates between $1.50 and $1.80 in economic activity, and that supports jobs in local communities and retailers. So if we want our country, if we all have a vision for our country, where it's a place where children can thrive, it's a place where our economy is strong and prosperous, it's a place where our workforce is healthy, educated, skilled, and productive, where older adults, veterans, and people with disabilities are able to get what they need, and where we have a brighter tomorrow for our future generations, then we need to end hunger. And SNAP is critical to ending hunger and achieving that vision. And it starts with protecting and strengthening SNAP, and it starts by passing the Hunger Free Future Act. And thank you for your time.
We'll now take questions. Yes, Harry. Well, we've always believed that this is still America, people have the right to make their own choices, and so that is the position that we will continue to take. I think it's a slippery slope when you start telling people what they can and can't buy. And the fact that we're listening to Robert F. Kennedy, who has proven himself to be an unreliable, untrustworthy, and that the reality, he is not a scientist. I don't think that he is the person who should be dictating and determining the standards around issues, and I will yield to. Go ahead.
I think that if that's the conversation that Robert F. Kennedy or any Republican wants to have, then let's have it. But you can't have that conversation without then having subsequent conversations about redlining in communities, about the types of products that are available to people in certain communities. I can tell you, in the neighborhood where I grew up, there was no Whole Foods, but there were multiple bodegas. So if we're going to have that conversation, then how are we bringing the healthiest foods into the communities where people live? And the other thing that Robert F. Kennedy needs to consider, if that's the argument that they want to pursue, calories are cheap. Nutrition is expensive. So if he wants to talk about that, then that actually bolsters the argument to increase SNAP dollars so that people can make the healthiest food choices, so that people can choose products that are not processed for their family. But right now, in most neighborhoods, in most communities, on most tribal reservations, people are exercising the options that are available to them. So I'm game for that conversation. Let's have it. But part of that conversation has to include making sure that we are going into communities and looking at the structure and the makeup, because there are lots of communities that have not a single veterinary clinic, but multiple pawn shops, multiple liquor stores, multiple bodegas. So let's have that conversation to make sure that we're providing those options to the most marginalized communities and to the people who need them the most.
And let me just add, Robert Kennedy, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump are very wealthy men. When is the last time any of them stepped foot in a supermarket? When is the last time any of them went grocery shopping? This benefit that we're talking about right now is a little over $2 per person per meal. What the Republicans want to do is lower that benefit to about $1.60 per person per meal, and they want to dictate to struggling families what they can and cannot buy, no matter what is accessible, no matter what is affordable. What we do know that what works is programs like the Healthy Incentives Program, the Double Up Bucks Program, GusSNP, where you get double the bucks if you go and buy fresh fruits and vegetables. People are utilizing that, and people appreciate that. But the idea that not only are you expecting people to make better choices with, again, an average of $2 per person per meal, but then you want to lower it. I mean, what the hell planet are these people living on? This is not the real world. I mean, they're in some rich people's bubble. They have no idea what regular people, what people who are struggling in poverty are going through.
All right. Well, thank you. Back to committee.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. Absolutely. Back to committee.
All right. Thank you.
All right, let's see it. Bye.